We did a resting metabolic test, which is just a test of how much carbohydrate and how much fat you're burning at rest, along with an exercise metabolic test, which is a measurement of how much carbohydrate, how much fat, and how many calories you're burning during exercise. Long story short is that, and I'm sure that you know this based on your conversation with Dr. Volek, even though most physiology textbooks will inform us that we can burn about 1.0 grams of fat per minute during exercise, the athletes who followed a ketotic or a low carbohydrate diet for close to 12 months were experiencing fat oxidation values of closer to 1.5 to 1.8 grams of fat per minute, significantly higher than what you would expect. And so there's not only a glycogen sparing effect in a scenario like that, but there's also some pretty significant health implications, meaning that you're creating fewer free radicals and experiencing less fermentation in the gut and experiencing less fluctuations in blood sugar. And I guess one of the more annoying parts for me about the whole results of that test was that people said, oh, they call it the faster study, but you guys weren't going any faster. You guys who did the high fat diet. Well, that's not the idea. That is where I think people get derailed a little bit. The goal here is not to go faster. The goal here is to go as fast, right? To figure out a way to limit the health effects or eliminate the health effects of chronic fluctuations in blood sugar or chronically elevated blood sugar while still maintaining similar speeds. And so that was my whole philosophy going into this, was if I can go just as fast by limiting sugars, why not do it? If I slow down, well, then I have to ask myself that question of what kind of balance do I want between health and performance? How many years of my life or how many years of my joints or how much gut distress am I willing to sacrifice in exchange for going just a little bit faster? Now, fortunately, it turns out that you can go just as fast, again, not faster, but just as fast on a carbohydrate limited diet. So why not do it?
I'm glad you brought that up because, I always say, look, go as fast with this diet, right? Like you said, it's not to go faster, it's to go as fast, but what I always say is, but live longer. Because what's happening is these high carb athletes, their problems, from joint problems, heart attacks, it's just getting more and more that these people are dropping dead and having horrible degenerative disease, and yet they're thin, and yet they have all of this degenerative disease, indicating years of inflammation and oxidative stress driven by glucose spike, insulin spike after another, which we know is oxidative and damaging to the cells, and obviously even ages you prematurely. And really that's the problem. So, Ben, you're right. I enjoy endurance sports myself, but we know that people that do a lot of endurance sports absolutely drive more oxidation and aging. But I believe that has changed, and your studies and others now have proven that has changed with a fat-adapted athlete. And Ben, I don't know your body fat, but I know I'm at age 50 under 8%, and yet we can go for hours and hours and hours without ingesting carbohydrates because we're very efficient fat burners. And I think your studies prove that. And just to bring it back to people, what Ben was talking about, they used to say that people that were very efficient at fat burning can at least burn 1 gram per an hour of exercise, per minute of exercise. But you proved that it was higher, much higher, almost 2 grams in someone who's fat adapted, their ability to burn fat while they're exercising.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really one of the best parts about the study, is because there was even criticism in the beginning of, look, you guys talk about this fat adapted exercise, but where is the proof that you can burn that much fat during exercise? Well, you won't do it on a high carbohydrate diet. You only burn those numbers and that much fat while you're fat adapted.
Yeah, and I think that one of the important considerations here is you need to look at the length of time that the fat-adapted athletes in that study followed a high-fat diet. right? The researchers reached out to me a year prior to that test. Most of the athletes who I coach or who I consult with who are doing well following a high-fat diet have been following that for 1 to 2 years. Sure, you experience some of the health effects of lower blood sugar levels and less oxidation even after following a diet like this for a couple of weeks. But in terms of you achieving what's called the mitochondrial density necessary for producing a lot of ATP on a high-fat diet while exercising, you're looking at needing to be in it for the long haul. And granted, in the whole scheme of things for an athlete who may want to compete in a sport for, say, 20 years, spending 6 months to 2 years getting yourself to a state where you can really efficiently use a natural source of fuel and limit oxidation, it's not an incredibly long period of time, but I do think a lot of people hear about this magical effect of a high-fat diet and they rush out and they feel like crap, especially with those first 2 weeks. And that's something important to understand is you have to be in this for the long haul before you really begin to experience a lot of the favorable adaptations, before you begin to be able to go for really long periods of time without eating and even exercise during those periods of time. I mean, it takes some time to build up to being adapted